All right, here we go again. Trying to get my screen to where I need it so I can see the volume meter. That's very interesting because the volume was up and now it's down. We'll move that back up. All right, so here we go. It's a scam from state and local governments as well as the Democrats that they're allowed to do anything in reference to ICE. I mean, anything. So where do these court activities come from that have wrongfully restricted ICE's capabilities? Mostly Democratic Party and their private sector cronies. It is clear that the executive branch of the United States is the only entity authorized in immigration. Nobody else. And that has been clear from both sides of the aisle over the years based upon lawsuits. They are in a government position. They can't manipulate. It's not free speech. Now, I don't know if you can go beyond a civil type of ruling. Well, they're standing out there all day coming up with policy in their city in reference to immigration. It's not legal. There is only one enforcement arm in reality in immigration, and that's ICE. Isn't that interesting? We'll call it ICE and we won't call it immigration. They are essentially manipulating and adulterating and changing immigration policy and procedure by calling it ICE. It is unlawful and it is criminal. But the entities themselves most likely can be forced to stop interfering with immigration. The mayor's office of Chicago is not allowed to manipulate or interfere in immigration. It is against the law, but getting a prosecution is probably very difficult. But you could probably indict. No, it's hands off. By calling it ICE, oh, it's ICE! It's not ICE, it's immigration. There is no other enforcement arm within immigration. The Border Patrol enforces the border. They don't enforce the immigration program. Now, they were brought in for assistance. It was highly successful, no matter what they say. Problem is, you have too many sellouts in government who would love to stab somebody in the back. And I'm not saying that's what Homan did. Much larger than that. It's out the everyday officer level. And of course, their lives are set now. They're on a list of people that are deep state. It is not lawful for a state government or a city government to meddle in immigration process. To sit there every day and run ICE into the ground is obviously a government action designed to interfere and manipulate immigration policy and effectuation of that policy in the United States. It's not free speech. They're not a citizen speaking out They're speaking from a government entity that has altered immigration policy and effectuation of that policy as designed by the authorized entity, the executive branch and the executive. They are suable. They are prosecutable in some cases. So what is that thing that the Biden administration gets when they went in there? Continuing resolution, or something like that. Not continue. Maybe a continuing resolution. I can't remember what it's called. A consent decree. Start preparing your consent decrees. And start charging. And start suing. You understand the issue with the national emergency and military money being used for ICE and TSA and all that is that we need more military money. Funding TSA and not ICE is a game. It's not even real. We'll leave the nation unprotected and just fly people in, right? Same old, same old. If they could defund the FBI, they would. Maybe that's next. And tell us they're just, harassing immigrants who stole hundreds of millions of dollars, probably in the totality of billions of dollars or billions of dollars. While we're trying to find food that the Democrats are pointing to, we're going to make it easier for immigrants to defraud the United States and kick back to the Democrats. That's what they're afraid of them finding. I told you about the charity mafias years ago. I yelled at the Democratic Party and said, yeah, you want money, but you're squandering the money. You're stealing from the money. Program receives 10, 15% of actual funding services. First off, they steal the money direct by the NGO, the nonprofit. Then the person they give the contract is another crony who's never held to the grindstone to provide what they paid for. Because we have middle men and middle women who get the contract and then subcontract it to another scammer. So about 10 to 15% of the funding actually turns into services. Because the person that they contract does not provide the service, especially at a cost-effective rate. No, make no mistake. They're not just, we've had it with ICE. They're unprotecting the United States of America. But they're going to keep the airports open to fly the criminals around. Because ICE in our airport is unacceptable. They may find some criminals. Can't move the dope when they're in the airport. Makes us nervous, right, crooks? Remember I told you one of the things that came up psychically about why they got rid of my life was nobody feels comfortable with me around to commit the crimes that the deep state and the dirty cops and the dirty federal agents commit. We can't do it with him around. ICE made the criminals nervous in the airport. Get them out of the airport! We'll tell them about that 16-year-old you had sex with, Schumer! Etc. It's a double whammy punch the narcos use and the Iranians use. Extortion and then payment. They give them, it's a protection racket. As soon as the government person goes to the deep state, they make them invincible. Nobody can come against them. There's an army of exploiters and extortionists. So get back to the beginning of this. States are not allowed to manipulate immigration policy and effectuation of that policy at all. Anti-ICE is manipulation of immigration policy and the effectuation of that policy. They're committing active crimes, felonies. They're impeding, and worse. It's also part of the Islamic takeover. Now, again, we have friends that are Islamic that understand that everybody has a right to worship. But that's not what's underway. And attacking Iran woke them all up that they're little Latino, and remember there's a Latino takeover also. The Latinos are some big supremacists, major supremacists. And an Islamic takeover, a jihadist takeover. I have to grok check all the Japanese stuff coming out. I'm like, oh my God. They really stepped on it. Right? Japan says no. See, Japan sees it. Right? It's supremacy. It's not, oh, this is my religion, to take everything from you and steal it and destroy you. Right. Talking about Jews the whole time, right? Smoke and mirrors. It's the Latinos and the Islamics. Right. Running around, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. Meanwhile, they're stealing you blind in every state in the union. And moving into the state houses and the city mayor offices. So they can write you out and say it's okay because you're not a believer and you're white. Although it affects black people also and everyday Latinos that want a normal world, not Narcoville. Narco is also a protection racket. I've been telling you it's racketeering. That's some of their big enforcement mechanism and their money. And it's in Congress offices, it's in Senate offices, House offices, in mayor's offices. Kickbackville. Protection racketville. It's okay that we screwed your last 30 years, you're white. Is it personal? Of course it is. What you did to my family, Russians, Chinese, Latino narcos, and sex criminals. I don't care if you worked with some FBI agent. Some of them are in prison. The others are sitting there on television trying to figure out how to lie about the administration enough to make some sort of thing destroy the effectuation of law. Because it's obvious they weren't doing that for the last 20 years. Self-enriching for foreign powers and foreign nationals involved in crime is not enforcing law. No matter what fantasy you make up about the deep state. He sold us out. That's why Jonathan Luna died. They hacked the app. They got in. Somebody fixed it. And they couldn't hack the app, but they just were able to do it. I guess they ran them off. Let me make sure that it stops because it may have plugged in. Sometimes it plugs in. You don't see that it shut down the app. So let's take a look here. Yeah, it shut down. Or shut down the broadcast. It doesn't matter that some former FBI agent or former deputy marshal came up and offered you something and told you to do something. They work for Russians. They work for Romania, organized crime. Remember, before the cartels, it was the Russians, the Romanians, Ukrainians. All their organized crime entities were taking over U.S. government with the corrupt government employees that had something to hide and would hide for whatever it cost the nation. And eventually it moved in to the narcos using the same system. Because spies are whores, man. Spies are whores. There's no way that the narcos and all the rest of the sex traffickers and everybody else that's committing these